everyone, it's Stephanie here, and today I have a video for the Simon Says Stamp May card kit called May Flowers. And for my project this month, I'm going to be creating one of these cool Tim Holtz Assemblage clocks. I created one a couple weeks ago, and I really love how fun it is to do. I didn't know if I would like it at first, just because it's a little bit different from what I normally do, but I figured out after I did the first one that it'd be really fun to do a couple different inserts for it and just switch them out in the different seasons and stuff. So what I did here is I just have the base bottom part of the clock already covered with pattern paper and stuff, and then to raise this piece here that you see, which is what I created for this video, which is from the May Simon Says Stamp card kit, is I just put a bunch of layered cork in between the bottom layer and then that layer to lift it up, because the clock is pretty deep inside, so you have a lot of room, and I wanted the focal circle to be closer to the glass front than just having it on the background would allow. So that's what I use that cork for. So you could use anything, because once you have the clock assembled, you don't really see anything that's sandwiched between them. So now I'm just going to go through how I created this piece here. And what I did is I just cut out the two circles from the My Favorite Things Circle Stacks dies. I used the biggest one from each set, Circle Stacks 1 and 2, and then they just layer perfectly on top of each other. And I just cut a few different ones out. This pattern paper here that I'm using for the video isn't actually from the kit. It was just an extra piece that I had on hand. I just didn't want to use another one of the kit papers just to recreate this, so I just decided to use that. And then what I've done here is I've just pre-stamped in a couple things just in time for the video. And what I've done is I've stamped the American Crafts mason jar stamp onto Neenah cardstock, as well as the heavyweight vellum that comes in your kit. You're going to want to stamp the one on the cardstock with Memento black ink, because we're going to use some Copics on that. And then you're going to want to stamp the one on the vellum with StazOn, just because StazOn tends to bleed with ink and you want it to dry permanently on there. So, and then what I'm just doing here is I'm stamping the same stamp once again onto Eclipse masking paper so that I can create a mask before I do some of my stamping. Now, for this specific project, I really didn't need a mask, because I end up putting a cutout jar over top of where the stamping would be anyway, but I just wanted to do it for the video just in case if anyone wanted to recreate this type of look and wanted the actual jar stamp to be right on the paper. This is just a great way to be able to do that and not have to have a separate piece that's already stamped on cardstock. So I just went ahead and layered that right onto the paper where I wanted it. And now I've got the rose stamp from the kit. Best Mom Ever, I believe, is the name of this month's exclusive stamp set. And I'm just going to go ahead and start with my middle flower, and I'm going to stamp it up pretty close to the top, just because you want to have a bit of space in between the actual flower and then the top of the jar to allow for all the stems that are going to be side by side. They need to be able to have room to actually come out the top of the jar. And then I'm just manipulating my stamp on the stamp block and then just kind of laying it on top to make sure that everything's going to fit together. If stuff overlaps, that's completely fine. We're going to end up covering all of the top of the flowers with the cardstock anyway, so it's not going to matter. You don't have to worry about masking or anything, because you're not going to see it once we're done anyway. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue to stamp these. And as you can see, the actual bottom parts of the stems are ending up stamping on the mask there. So once I finish stamping all of these flowers, which I'm going to speed it up here in a minute, you're not going to see any of those stem pieces, because I'm just going to pull that mask right off. So I just went ahead and did the other side the exact same way, and now I'm just doing the very last flower. And with this one, you just want to make sure that when you stamp this, you're making sure that the stem part is still coming out the top of the jar and not the side, just to keep it realistic. And then once you've got all that done there, you're just going to go ahead and remove your mask. And then these stems, you're just going to want to elongate a bit, because once you add that jar on top, you're going to have a little bit of a gap there. So I just used my Memento tuxedo marker and just quickly drew lines on the bottom there just to extend them down. And then when I actually adhere my jar stamp, or I'm sorry, my jar stamped paper onto the background, those will be down far enough that you won't see where they start and end. So I'm just going to go ahead and put my jar on with temporary adhesive, just because I just want to set it there temporarily right now to figure out where I want to put all of my stems in my jar. So I'm just going to take that same marker and then just freehand, starting with the center flower, I'm just going to freehand the stems going all the way down to the bottom of the jar. And the reason I did this was because, as you could see when I stamped the flowers earlier, the stems aren't long enough to fully go down. So this keeps it more realistic when you go ahead and make those longer so that they fully fill the jar. So I'm just going to finish those there and get them all the way down. And then I decided to just use Copic markers to do the coloring in the jar, and I just did those quickly. As you can see, they don't have to be perfect. They're stems, so I mean they're definitely not perfectly shaped. So just go ahead and then just use your Copic marker and color those all in. And then once I finish that, sorry about the shake here, I just used an aqua memento marker and quickly scribbled over top of the stems just to give a very slight look of water. And now here, this part here where we're going to use the vellum, I'm just going to use adhesive at the top and bottom of the jar, and then I'm going to adhere that stamped vellum jar that we did earlier right over top of the jar, exactly positioning all of the stamped lines over one another. And this just kind of gives the jar a look like there's actually glass and water inside of there. So it just gives a fun, more realistic look to the jar by adding that vellum piece onto the top. So once you've done that, you're pretty much all ready to go, except for the lid of the jar. You just want to stamp that on some type of gray or brownish colored paper and adhere that on, which I've already done, and it's ready to go here. So now it's time to create our flowers. So I just took the pink cardstock that comes inside the kit, and I'm just going to go ahead and stamp that rose flower 10 times, just because I want to do some layering to make it more realistic. I think the original one, it's actually layered more than what I'm going to do in the video, but that's personal choice. As much as you want the flowers to lift off the pages, how many times you can just keep layering them. So I'm just going to go ahead and completely stamp all of these flowers onto the cardstock. And then once I have them all stamped on, I'm going to start coloring them. And what I did for these is I just did 2 different coloring patterns on the flowers. Some of them I did the outside areas of the rose, as you can see, and then some of them I switched it and did the inside areas. So just to give once we layer them all, as you can see in the original there, it's a little bit off the screen, but I'm sure you can tell up there that I have the different coloring patterns staggered just to give a little bit more of a fun look to it. So now that you have them all colored and cut out, you're just going to start adhering them all onto the thing, and I adhered the wrong one on first for the pattern I was trying to do, so I'm going to rip that off here in a minute. But you want to make sure you just start putting these on at the bottom, what would appear to be the bottom flowers first. So I just started at the 2 ends and then just worked my way to the middle and just put all those on there. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish adding all those flowers on there now. And then once I have my first full layer down, which they're just adhered directly onto the cardstock, I'm going to go around now and add dimensional adhesive to each of the flowers. And then I'm going to take the additional rose tops that I have already cut out, and I'm going to just adhere those all on top of the current ones. And then I'm going to put it the wrong way again, so I have to rip it off there. And then I'm just going to adhere all those on. So, and then I end here with that many layers, so they're just 2 layers high. For the original one that I created, I think that I put an extra one in the middle just to make the middle flower stand out a little bit taller than the rest. So, like I said, it's completely personal preference. So now that I have all the flowers on and all the stems are ready and the jar is completely done, I just went ahead and permanently adhered the jar to the cardstock circle. And now, just for a little bit more added emphasis, I'm just going to add some sparkles to all of the flowers. So I just used my Sakura Stardust sparkle marker and just went around and colored over top of all of the black lines of the flowers. And then to add just a little bit more something, I stamped and cut out leaves from the stamp set. I just, rather than keeping them all together how they come on the set, I just cut them apart. And I adhered all of them onto the cardstock, directly onto the cardstock, except for the one in the center there. I put that one on some foam adhesive just to make it pop off and overlap the lid of the jar a bit. And then once you have finished doing that, you're just going to go ahead and ink the edges for some added definition, and then just adhere that to the other cardstock circle you've already cut. And then you just need to add your sentiment. So I use one of the pre-printed exclusive tags that was created for Simon from L Studio, but you can use that or a sentiment strip or a stamp or however you'd want to do it. And then for the final touch, I just added a couple of gems. So thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time.